Okay, very warm welcome. Hey Dave, hey Mark, to see you here. Um, I am live on YouTube as well, so we're streaming this into the Academy today, as we do every Thursday at 2 o'clock. I'm John. If you've not met me before, nice to see you virtually, or see names at least. These live streams are kind of super informal. Welcome Latonya, welcome Joe. Um, just doing the preamble. Oh, welcome. Loads of people joining now. Lovely to see you all here. Welcome, Michael. Welcome back, Wayne and Gail. Some familiar faces. So, continuing the regular Thursday live streams, Connor will do Friday live streams as he always does. Welcome, David. But I'm going to keep the Thursday ones up until you guys get bored or girls get bored. Connor's not here tomorrow for his live stream because he's in lovely Spain, but I think he'll be back next week, raring to go. He's got some fantastic stuff coming up around learning management system. So we'll be doing a lot around that, I think, in July. But yeah, lovely to see so many people joining today. It is live on YouTube. It will be today recorded on YouTube. I'll probably spend about, I don't know, an hour 15, an hour and a half, depending. Welcome back, Beth. Beth Beck. Um, Probably what I'm going to do, I'm going to face into a couple of challenges, like I often say I'm going to. Some things we spotted in the academy, but there's one that really got my interest last week, and I'm going to dig into it a bit. And it's today's live stream. Really, the theme is going to be proving that there are many ways to do things with Microsoft 365. There's probably better ways, and there's probably less efficient ways, but I'm a person that finds a way that works for me, has a good look at it and says, is that all right? And then I'll try and build on that, of course. But what I'm going to show you today, let me just switch to my screen view, is we had a really good set of questions in the forum this week. And by the way, if you are taking part in the forum or you've got questions, I'm loving seeing the amount of interactions that you're all giving to each other, the willingness and freedom with which you're all giving each other answers. Connor and myself very often dip into this, and if we can add value, we will. But if we're seeing like lots and lots of comments, then we'll probably allow that thread just to play out because your views are really, really valued. But there was a fantastic thread actually, and it got quite a lot of comments on it around one of those things that we've probably all done, and it was having having an app, Excel, having data in Excel and wanting to interact with it. And this particular one was looking at, I don't know why this got my interest, but it just did. It was looking at changing worksheet names in Excel. And it just led me down this path of thinking, well, I know how I would approach it first and foremost. And then somebody mentioned, I think it was Fabian actually, mentioned using the Graph API, or I may have come across that, and I started to explore that. So today I'm probably going to spend about 20 minutes just poking around at Power Automate Desktop, what it is, what I've been able to do with it, what you might be interested in with it. But I'm going to switch then to something that genuinely, in my view, is a little bit out of my comfort zone. I'm your classic no code, low code type of mindset. I'd rather not code. I'd rather not interact too far behind the scenes if I can avoid it. But I think there are times when stuff like this becomes useful, and so I'm going to approach this on your behalf and mine really, as a bit of a novice, because it's there that I'm hoping to unpack a little bit how not difficult it was, if that's even English. I don't know if that's English. Welcome if you just joined. You're going to see me rambling for about an hour and a half today. So look, the use case is this. It is, how do I, using Microsoft 365, interact with some stuff I'm doing in Power Automate in the cloud, make.powerautomate.com. How do I interact with an Excel worksheet? So let's just go and dig. I'm going to use my developer tenant with the wonderful Adele, who is ever present in my life. She's a great friend and confidant. She actually looks a bit like Helen, who works with us from time to time, but it's not Helen. That's Mark's wife. And I'm going to use this use case. Welcome, Mark. Welcome, Keith. I'm going to use this use case to just explore a little bit. So I'm going to pretend that I have a flow set up. and that flow maybe gets an email. I'm not going to build it. I'm just going to pretend, and I'm going to hook into it later on. But I'm going to pretend Adele's got a flow set up, and some data comes from an email, and it gets formatted, and some good stuff happens. But then I need to send on a spreadsheet. But before I do that, I've got to interact with that spreadsheet. And there are ways in Power Automate in the cloud that is possible. But I'm just going to go now and ferret around in another way. Very much depends on your use case, but you're probably all familiar with the cloud triggers and actions that you've got, and they work beautifully with things that are really nice and easy within Microsoft 365. But when you've got desktop documents, maybe they're not in SharePoint, maybe they're somewhere else. Maybe they're sat on your desktop. It gets a little bit more complex, but it is absolutely possible. So if you're going to go and create a flow, the first thing that in this instance you might want to do is pop up here to this install button, and you'll notice it there, Power Automate for Desktop. In case you've never come across it, it thinks and behaves in the same way as Power Automate. It's a workflow system, but it lives on your desktop, and it gives you different capabilities that are more local to you. And I first used it 12 months ago. Had a list of welcome Floyd, welcome Gary. Had a list of Excel documents, and no, in fact it wasn't. It was Word documents, and we had like hundreds of them, and we had to turn them all into PDFs. So I was going through on my desktop. I was opening up the Word document, save as, click, change the name, stick it in a different folder, save. And I kind of thought there must be a better way. And so I came across Power Automate for Desktop at that point. It's sometimes referred to as robotic process automation. In my head, because I grew up with IT in like the 90s and 2000s, it's like a macro tool, I'm going to say, for things that you need to interact with on your desktop, and it's super useful. And I'm going to show this example that I was tinkering with. So the first thing is you install it. So I've got it. Here's one I prepared earlier. I've got it installed. It looks like, I may as well just show you actually opening it. Power Automate. So you see it's installed. It looks like Power Automate. You could be forgiven for thinking you're going to the cloud service, but you're not. When it loads, it looks like this. You get this kind of interface. What I've done is I've signed in to my developer tenant. So that is quite crucial. If you want to interact with it from your cloud flows, you have to be in the same environment and the same user ID. Just quickly in chat, give us a thumbs up or an indication if you've ever used Power Automate Desktop. Use a yes or use a thumbs up, whatever you fancy. There's quite a few there. So yeah, Floyd, you've used it. Cool. By the way, if you do call out your name, I'll only use first names. This is streaming out to YouTube. However, I will protect people's privacy and be a bit more careful about names. Beth, yes, you've used it. Cool. Okay, so yeah, some people have used it, not put it to use. That's cool. So this is just a really interesting use for it. It isn't massively complex to get used to. I think it's got a lot more power than I will give it credit for in the next sort of like 20-25 minutes, because I want to move to the Graph API for the same use case. But really, you've got the same concept. You've got flows that people have shared with you. It's not templates, but you've got examples. In fact, actually, I didn't notice that as an Excel one. But it's really straightforward. So first of all, sign in. Connect to the right environment, the same environment where you might have your documents if you're storing them in the cloud. For me, the environment doesn't matter, other than if I create this desktop flow, I will see it in my cloud service environment if I've done the same things. So dead easy, create a new flow. Let's just call this Excel. Let's call it worksheets. Doesn't really have to be worksheets, but I like doing stuff like this because it's something that I discovered myself, and I hope by sharing this with you, maybe someone watching this will find a little shortcut they can use. So you'll see what happened there. It popped up another window. It was actually over here, but I've dragged it into the same window. But you've got your flow name there. You've got your effectively your canvas here, and this is where you can start doing stuff. Now, the thing that I discovered, if you look down the left-hand side, it's a bit like in Power Automate, you have groups. Power Automate on the cloud, you have groups of triggers and actions. Same sort of principle here, and they are growing. Last time I looked at this, you didn't have half of these. But interestingly, not all of the products that you might have on your desktop seem to be covered, but some key ones are, and you can exploit them. So I won't go through all of these because I don't think there's going to be a huge amount of value in that. But just skimming down, if I pop this open, you can see there's a whole bunch of things you can do with Excel, and we'll come on to that in a minute. You've got a whole bunch of things you can do with your email client. And remember, this is all on your desktop. Outlook, you can do PDFs. I used, you can get information from PDFs. FTP could be quite handy if you need to do some like level of migration. I bet you could open, well, you can see it, open connections, grab stuff, grab files. That's quite nice for a little migration tool, actually. Interesting. IBM Cognitive something or other. Don't know what that is. SharePoint. Okay, so that's a premium one, so I'm not connected into that. But you get the point that there are a number of things you can interact with. If you've not got the product listed down here and it's a desktop application, there are ways to interact with desktop applications. Let me just remember what I did for that many moons ago. It was, there is, let's find it. It was launch. Wasn't launch, run. Run application, there you go. So it's in the system grouping. And what you can do there is if you use, and I'll show you how to use it, when you use that, you can give it the application URL. There's generally an executable on your desktop. Give it that, it'll run it. And what happens is you can then interact with the instance of that product in the same way I'm going to show you with Excel. It's a little bit more convoluted, but you can do that. But anyway, back to the use case. Let's just pull up the Excel group of actions. First thing you have to do is you find the thing you want to do. So I want to launch Excel. You click it and you drag it. It's literally as simple as that. Welcome, Keith. Welcome, Bear. Just saying hello to new people joining the chat. So I'm going to launch Excel with a blank. I can do it with a blank document, but in this instance, I'm just thinking through that use case I saw on the Academy. My thought process went, well, if you've got a document and it's the same document and all you're doing is changing a worksheet or adding a worksheet before you send it on, I may as well hook it to the actual document. So you get document paths. Let's just find my desktop. Here's one I made earlier. So I'm going to open that document and it fills all that in for you. That's like point and click, which is really nice. You can run things in the background. So here you can have the idea of having unattended runs or invisible runs. Genuinely, I think when I've used those in the past where I've not had stuff visible and I've not had stuff on the screen, I found it to be more flaky. I ran about 200 or so PDFs through this system, just opening the Word, doing some interactions like I'm going to show you, changing some data, saving it to a new folder, and I had to keep it all visible every so often because as applications launch, they'll take up memory. Every so often it would get its knickers in a twist and it would just, so I had to restart the flow. But my recommendation, my honest advice is do things in small batches with this. You experiment with invisible running, but I wouldn't rely upon it. If you've got a business critical process, just think about batching things up a little bit, which you can do. So anyway, I'm not going to do much with it. I'm just going to open a document. So let me just show you that, right? Let's show you the first step. So I've created a step. The other thing I always do with Power Automate Desktop, because you won't notice this if you do it like naturally as a double click on an Excel file, there's a pause while things load into memory and it consumes up some resources. If you don't put those pauses into your flow, it won't know to wait and it'll go and try and do the next step whilst Excel's loading. So that's a slightly different mindset with Power Automate Desktop. It's not managing the resources for you. You've got to be quite explicit. So the thing to do there is to pop a little weight in. It is like old-fashioned procedural language, this a little bit, I think. Give it a duration. So for file launches, I tend to give it like 3 to 5 seconds. If I'm opening batches, I'll give it a bit longer, but we'll just do that. So let's just quickly show you that. So you click run, and you know what, it runs. So there we go. So I've got this file. So that's the first thing. Can I interact with an Excel file automatically? Well, I can open it up. So let's just close it down. You'll see the flows run. You can put breakpoints in. I just clicked on the row. So I can run it to that point and stop. And then I can recommence the flow. So if you're debugging it, again, it's a bit like some of the more classical script language coding interfaces like VB6, I think, are used, and you had these debug breakpoints years and years ago. Anybody use VB6? Waits for somebody to note in the chat. Maybe not. No, Wayne. No, that probably dates me a little bit, actually. VB6 and ASP.NET. I don't even think I did ASP.NET. I think it was ASP. Long time ago. Anyway, the important bit here to figure out is that there's a number of ways to do it. Again, like I said at the start, there's a number of ways to crack things with Microsoft a long time ago, Mark. Yeah. Mine it's like, oh, I don't like to think, actually. It probably was 20 something years ago. Anyway, there's a number of ways to do this. You can have this tool that you're seeing in front of you record your screen, and it'll record your screen clicks and go and do those things. But what I wanted to do was to launch it, and the safer way for me is to not rely upon where the mouse is on your screen and record that, but to try out the keystrokes. So I'll tell you what I mean. Let's just open that Excel document. Let's go and open that one. If you go and Google what are the keyboard shortcuts for updating a worksheet, the first thing you can do to get access to all the shortcuts in a lot of the Office tools, the Office tools, Word and Excel, is press Alt on your keyboard. You'll notice on my screen there I've got these little numbers and stuff, and then it's just a case of pressing the right sequence. And if I get this right, probably won't. Is it Alt? O and R? No, it won't be that. Let's just do it again. Alt. Tell you what, I made a note of it. Notepad. Where did I put it? Let's just move this over here so you're not seeing my absolute abomination of a filing structure. There we go. It was okay. So it's Alt. Okay, I'm going to pretend I didn't just refer to my notes. Then Alt H for home, O for format. Okay. R for worksheet. Okay. H, O, and R. So basically what I did is I spent about 10 minutes Googling what are the keyboard shortcuts to be able to type into a keyboard and then go and get to the thing that I want to rename. So I've got that now. I know what it is. So then I go back and I do a thing, and let's just find it down here. You get the ability to use the mouse and keyboard as if it were you, and this is where the power of these robotic processes comes in. So I can move my mouse, I can do all sorts of things there, but this is the one I want. I can send keys. There's a few others there, but if I pop send keys over here, again, you get the little pop-ups. You've got a bit of control over where you're sending those keys on your desktop, but what I want to do is I want to send it to the instance of the window that is open. You can actually send to very specific UI components if it knows. You can record your screen and it'll understand what bits of your screen you've got generally. But here I'm going to send to a window, and it's going to say, which window do you want to send to? Well, it's already, again, like Power Automate in the cloud, it's done a lot of the thinking for you. I want to send to the current Excel instance. And all I really need to do is then type in the keyboard shortcuts that I want. So there's a couple of things here. I'm going to split this into 2 steps and not just do it all at one. You could write a whole script here to do Alt HOR, then send something else, maybe change it to a name. You can actually pull the variables. This little thing up here means if you've saved variables in the course of your flow, which you can do, I can grab, for example, I can have a step which opens Excel, grabs the name of the file. You just have to explore the Excel and the screen interactions you've got here, but you could do all of that, stick it in variables, bring that bit of data back. You can change the variables on the fly, so it's a really, really powerful tool. And I was a bit surprised, honestly, that it's not something that seemed to get a lot of traction and knowledge out there, but judging by your responses, quite a few of you have played with it. Anyway, the thing to watch out when you're using keys is you've got these drop downs here. It's a little bit odd. I was looking around for the Alt key and I thought, well, the Alt probably, is it a function key? No, it's not a function key because that's your Fs. Where would it be? Would it be there? Well, Alt lives over here in the modifiers, so you just got to find where your things are. Alt, that's the written version of what it should look like. Let me just see if I can zoom. Do you want to zoom? Oh, there you go. Discovered that this week. If you press the Windows key and plus, you get this little zoom option. That's a nice little shortcut if you ever want to use it, the magnifier. But what I want to do is put Alt in there. So all that's going to do is going to press the Alt key. So let's just save that. I'm going to do another one because then what I'm going to do is I'm going to send the other keys and I'm going to send H. I think it's a comma. Let's just check it. The thing with Power Automate Desktop, I remember doing this first of all, it's trial and error a little bit. You've got to try it, see what happens, and come back to it. Sometimes stuff like delays between keystrokes means it's important. Sometimes it's not. But let's just try that. In fact, let's just try that. Yeah, let's run it to there. In fact, let's close this down. I'll probably blow it now. It's going to open up another instance, isn't it? Okay, it is. So it's waited 3 seconds. Okay, so it's pressed the Alt. You can see that. Let me just move. Let me just organize the screen a bit. Close some of these screens down. I'm just going to stop it. Kill that. Don't save. Right. Then you'll be able to see what's going on a bit better. Can't see that. That's terrible. Right. Let's just try again. Actually, I'm going to stick a wait at the end and I'm going to pause it. So what you can do again is you'd expect in the same way Power Automate, you've got the ellipse and you can copy to clipboard. You can copy them here. Can I? Well, that's interesting. Copy. Not like that. What have I just done? Okay. It was just being a bit slow. Okay, so I've copy and pasted it. I'll move that weight down there. Let's put a breakpoint in so it doesn't go beyond that. Let's click play. So open up Excel. I'm gonna wait. Let's just move this over here. So I don't know if you saw that. It's gone through that keystroke set and it's got me to the worksheet name. And then really it's a case of just having a little bit of a procedure to let's just stop it there. Let's just show you the variables. I'm just a little bit mindful of time because I want to get onto the Graph API option in a moment. Let's just make this a bit bigger for you. So what you can do is you can create variables. You can, let's just find what I would do. I could add an item to a list. I could set a variable. So what I might have done is I might have set a variable to the rolling name that I want. And then I might have a variable which is a number, which I then increase using that step. And I could just do that, and then I can basically send a variable to the Excel spreadsheet. So, well, let's just do that for the sake of argument. Let me just do set a variable. The value is going to be, I'm just going to call it a new name. There's all you should definitely, like with anything, you should definitely get into a naming convention pattern. So let's just call it a worksheet. That's the value in that variable. And what I might now do is I might try to send, let's just try it. Send keys. So do I want to send keys? Yeah, let's try this. This might not work, but I want to use a variable. I've got my worksheet name. Select that. It's going to send that as keys to the place wherever my cursor is. So let's just try that. Let's just take the debug point off and see what happens. I'll close this down. One of the tips again I want to give you, if you ever use Power Automate Desktop, you ever do something with a document, make sure you launch it and close it. Otherwise, very, very, very quickly, you end up with a full memory in a computer that crashes. So kill the Excel instance, or you can kill the instance rather than the application. So you can do that. But it's pretty cool, really. So let's just try that. See what it does. Give me a vote. Do you think it's going to work? Oh, I got a thumbs up. Oh, there you go. It worked. There you go. I didn't think I thought I'd done something wrong there, but there you go. So you can then interact with saves and all sorts. So if you were doing something with a class, just kill that. Don't save it. So that worked. I mean, you've just seen how quickly, whilst I've been talking to you, I've been able to just set the set that process up. So let's just do one last thing. Let's just save that. So you can go mad. I mean, like 10 minutes, that's allowed me to create a piece of an automation, which if I do that every day, let's say for the sake of argument, every day I have an email, I take data from it, I stick it in an Excel document, I then go and change the worksheet name to today's date, and I then save that, and I then pick it up and put it back into an email. If I've got this process running for the renaming, took me 10 minutes once, I might save 2 or 3 minutes, maybe 4 or 5 minutes every day if it's a longer process. That's where you really start to get the savings. But the bit that I've not shown yet, let's just go and have a little play with this. I've got Excel interaction with worksheets there. Let me go to Power Automate. I'll just give it a quick refresh. Let's see where my flow might exist. Desktop flows. What have I not done there? It might be because I'm on a developer tenant. Yeah, it's not included. Okay. There's another step, and I'm not going to go into that because I don't want to mess around with my developer tenant too much. But as long as you've got the license to run robotic process automations, you'll then see these flows, and you can call them as child flows from a cloud flow. So I could have my cloud flow which says grab an email, do some stuff to it. Within that, I could then hand off to the cloud flow, sorry, the desktop flow. You can even pass variables between them. There's input variables as a concept down in Power Automate Desktop. Let me just, I won't show you that, but what am I doing? Got it open over here, that's why. I won't show it to you, but you have the idea of input and output variables, so you can declare them and you can pass things to them, which is pretty cool. So yeah, I find it like a super useful tool. So that's one option. To go back to the original question, which is over here, I'm looking at a way of sending an Excel attachment. It needs to contain certain data. That's great, but I want to change the sheet name. That's one way you could do it. You could hand off to another tool. It works best if it is local folders or server folders. I mean, I do it with SharePoint documents because I synchronize SharePoint to my OneDrive. So I have a localized folder that I can interact with, which is effectively my SharePoint document library. When Connor and I did this as a production process, we had to be really careful about that because my URLs were different to Connor's for the same document. So if we were sharing the flow, there are ways to get around that. But I'd probably say if you're starting to think about something which is a bit more in the realms of many people interacting on documents in many different locations, then the second little light bulb moment that I've got to share with you might be where you want to go. And that is the Graph API. So I'm just going to take just a quick bio break, actually, just like 2 minutes, have a sip of water and stretch my back. And then I'm going to come back and we're going to look at the same problem from the angle of somebody like me who knows that I should be able to interact with stuff using the Graph API because I've heard it loads. It's really valuable, but I'm not entirely sure how. So yeah, I'll be right back. Right, back with you. Welcome if you just joined in the last moments. So yeah, I mean, was there anything in there that you found useful? Has anybody learned anything from that short demo of Power Automate Desktop, or any questions that you wanted to ask? I'm happy to kick back and try and answer them. Ah, thanks, Beth. But yeah, if there's interest in stuff like Power Automate Desktop, I'm always really happy, and Connor is as well, to just go and do a few videos and share them with you. So yeah, do have a play later, Dave. It's really handy. But like if you get a bit stuck, we've spent genuinely too many hours like messing with it. So I think I'm going to research this. I think it was a product that Microsoft bought way back when. Was would be the correct term when it was Power Automate product. A better one, be able to find. Yeah, here you go. Power Automate Wikipedia, formerly known as Flow. Okay, no, that's Power Automate. Got a funny feeling it was a product. Wayne, it is absolutely great, and I would it has implications. You can use it on your desktop without. I don't think I'm wrong in saying this, without any additional licenses. It just works. As long as you can download it, you can run it. It's when you want to connect it up to create what Microsoft have termed a robotic process automation, something that goes from your cloud flows to your desktop and maybe back again. That's when you start to get into licensing. It's not expensive. We did it. It cost us, I think it was a per flow license we used. So that means every person that every flow that gets used with that license can be used by, I think, I could be wrong with this, but I think it might only be able to use by one account. I could be wrong there. But either way, we assigned the flow to our service account and let it run. Something like $7 per month, which for us at the time, when we were spending hours doing documentation resaves, the 3 hours it probably took me to build the full RPA, it was worth it. It saved us bunches. But yeah, I think it used to be a product owned by somebody else prior. I don't know. I'll look it up, and I'll if anyone's interested, I'll share. But yeah, it's really useful, and I like it. But anyway, so my goal was to go and look beyond it, because if like I say, if you're not a single actor with a consistent location that you're getting your Excel documents to and from, it can become a little bit more painful. File structures and whatnot tend to get a little bit more awkward. So I started to think about the Graph API, and I just started asking. Well, first of all, I asked Bing, then I asked OpenAI, ChatGPT, then I asked Google, and I'll show you a few bits that I found out. So let's just do an experiment here. Just a quick straw poll. who uses the Bing or ChatGPT to support them with their investigations nowadays? Really intrigued as to who uses that. I should share my screen because you can't see my screen. Sorry. Yeah, Wayne, I'm sort of with you, Floyd. It was something I was reticent to do because I Google everything. Yeah, cool. So quite a few other people, Beth and Bear, you do use it. I Google everything, and then I started thinking, what happened? Yeah, I'm the same with you, Gail. I'm a Googler. Maybe there'll be like a clan in the future, the Googlers and the Bingers, and then there'll be the chatters. I've recently started doing this. I'll open it up on my normal account. It's the same stuff. I've recently started going to OpenAI. I'll log in. ChatGPT. It's the same stuff under the hood, really, with slight tweaks. I don't think the thing I showed you on Bing has GPT-4 yet. But I started using it. Let's just, what am I doing here? I'm flicking all over the place. Let's just do, I think it's on like everybody can use it now. Oh, I don't want to sign in. I can't be bothered. Let's go to one of my other ones. Let's go over here. Kill that. So I asked it and I said, using the Graph API, this is maybe what you'll do. I'm sharing my thought process with you here because I think sometimes we don't trust ourselves when we go off down these dark alleys. And like I got to the end of it fairly quickly. And if I can give you the confidence to go to the end of your thought process and hopefully have that little light bulb moment, then go for it. If not, you can just watch me and what I do. So using Graph API, how do I change a worksheet name in Excel? It's like I'll give it that, and I'm sure that'll give me something back. Oh yeah, okay, because I'm on Surfshark. I always do that. So Daisy, I hope I'm still back. I've just cleared my cache. There we go. Can you all still see me and hear me? I've just killed my my VPN. Give us a thumbs up. Somebody, yes, you can exit view. I do that a lot. I find it quite clever actually. I sit behind a VPN because I don't like the traffic being monitored and watched and whatnot. But I often just turn it off, and I find it super clever how it just reconnects in Teams to the same call. And I've not killed my YouTube stream, so that's good. Anyway, right, let's try that question again because Bing does not like you to be behind anything. It just says, nah, don't like that. I don't trust who you are. Right, let's try it. So this is maybe what you would do. You would Google it, or you would Bing it, or you would ChatGPT it. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, good. Yeah. So you get answers back like this, and you go, if you've got knowledge of JSON, you've got knowledge of the language, you're all right. But I started to go, all right, well, I've got that back, and I sort of get there's something going. Well, where does the patch live? Okay, now I know the answers up, but I'm going to just bear with me. I'm going to take you through the process. So I said, all right, so show me the steps. Implement a call to Excel using the Graph API from Power Automate. I thought, I get there's clearly a way I can see it. What would I need to do to get there? Well, I don't know where to start. I know that if I'm in Power Automate, there'll be a thing that I do, and I'm going to share a tip with you in a minute actually about that thing. But my brain when I first approached this was, I don't know where to go. I don't know what the process is, what the thinking process should be. And this is where you start to get genuinely, I think what it does here is pretty brilliant as a principle, but you have to not take it on face value. So to call Excel, use HTTP with Azure AD connector. Oh, right. Okay. So my brain started to go, well, there's a connector. Oh, light bulb moment. I'm going to talk to that in a minute. Then you use that connector to do something, and you use some level of request that you give to Excel. All right, that's great. Well, let me just quickly dip into Power Automate now, and I'll show you the first thing that I discovered. Let's go up to Adele's here. Let's create a flow. I'm going to create an instant cloud flow because then I can just test it. I mean, forgive me if I've not stepped back a little bit. I will do, actually, for the benefit of anybody who's not. I'm saying this word Graph API like it's something everybody should know. Genuinely, I think as a name, graph's like a line on a chart for me. I don't get it. But what I've discovered is that what it actually realistically is a bunch of tools that you can use, a bunch of ways to interact with Microsoft services using a common language and common structure. I think that's probably the best way to describe it. Why? Does anybody have any idea why it's called Graph? Just out of interest. I like the history of things. If you have, pop it into chat, because Graph API, anyway, it's the thing that can interact with other things in Microsoft Services API. API meaning it's a standardized way to call to a service and get a response back that's structured. That's probably the better way to describe it. It's a commonly known structure, so you can call off to Bing Maps using their API and get locations back. You give it you give it some information, it'll give you some information back. They don't have to sit within your Microsoft tenant necessarily. The Graph API is something that, think of it as a REST API for Microsoft 365. Yeah, that makes total sense. Again, I'm not like, I don't have the developer background that some do, but I understand that it's a thing that is there that you can call upon when you need it. Still going to say it one more time, why it's called Graph, don't know. But it's a thing that you can call upon if you need it to get data back or interact with services. And it's a lot easier to interact with some of the more complex things that you might want to do. Now, interestingly, let's just set this up before I blather on a bit longer. API call using Graph. In fact, I'm going to skip that. I don't need to give it a name right now. These things here, the groups, the actions, the triggers, I believe really what that is, it's like they've taken the API calls that go off to different services and thought, which ones of these get used most regularly? I know what we'll do is we'll put an icon on top of them. We'll put a skin on top of them for people like me to use a bit more readily. And they're there for you. That's why it's the low code angle for Power Automate. So I'm just going to use a flow button. Yeah, I'll manually trigger this flow. I started to think, well, if this is the case, Excel, there's an Excel group of actions. Are there any pre-baked Excel actions that I can use to interact with the worksheet name? Now I can get worksheets. What I couldn't readily find, I can create worksheets, so again, that could work for me, but I couldn't readily find anything beyond that that might deal with that specific worksheet update task. Irrespective of that, irrespective of the fact there might be a get worksheets, if I wanted to do that, I wondered to myself whether there was a way to do it using the Graph API or this REST API for Microsoft 365, as Mark's quite sort of correctly characterized it. Because just to replay that point, I have this could be wrong, so don't quote me on this, but I have this belief that what we're seeing here in this list is probably what Microsoft had done to skin up a Graph API call. So create table might be behind the scenes. Let's just let it do its thing. I wonder if we can inspect code. Peek code, of course we can. Yeah, it feels like it's doing some things that might, these are coded. So the Graph API is a bit coded. So it's like they've given us an abstraction for some of these, but they haven't been able to give us the full Graph API or the full set of calls. And sometimes you have to make your own. So I'm going to do that in this instance. And here was the little nugget. If you went to one of Matt Weston's workshops recently, he was talking about using the Graph API to create Teams channels. So again, like it's there's a whole bunch of things you can do with Teams. You can create meetings, you can create a team. Don't think there were channels down here. Let's just get the Teams group. It's channels. List, create, no, maybe there was. Anyway, no problem, Beth. See you next time. He was doing something with Teams and he came across this action and he said, if you're going to be using the Graph API, this is a really useful action to remember, because if I took Google at its word or Bing at its word, it wants me to create an HTTP action, which if I do that, I'm going to need to think about authentication. I'm going to need to, all that's really going to do is be a vehicle for a call off to the Graph API. It's going to take my request and it's going to, first of all, need to be an approved request for an authenticated user. And then secondly, it'll do the thing. But he said, well, there's a really good shortcut. If you use a different group of actions, the Office 365 groups, nicely named because it's Microsoft 365 groups. If you use this, what it does is it will interact using your inherent AD permissions, which saves you a step. So I don't know if it's helpful to you, but I wanted to share it anyway. But for me, it saved an awful lot of faff, was the first tip I wanted to share. I can send an HTTP request. It's gonna, you see it there, it's authenticating as Gale. So whatever Gale can do, I can now do with the Graph API. Now, it does then put you in a slightly odd position of needing to know a bit more about the Graph API and needing to be, I'll show you this in a minute, you have to approve different types of connection for the Graph API to allow it to get to stuff. But it's a really nice shortcut. You don't have to worry about sending keys and all that good stuff. You're sending you and you're going along with your request. So anyway, I got to that point. I thought, well, that's great. So what's the structure? How do I interact with the Graph API? And I started ferreting around, and again, let's just Google Graph API call an Excel file in OneNote, OneDrive. Working with Excel using Graph. Do you want to do that? Let's click that, see what we get there. Yeah, here we go. So I started looking at pages like this, and you might have done this in the past. And you go, all right, okay, so I can access it. You can probably see on my face at this point when I start reading stuff, I start to kind of switch off a little bit. And I got to a point where I can see there's calls and I can actually see there's substitutes, information that I need to be putting in. And my brain goes, all right, so if I send off a request that's structured like this, I've got to know what an ID is. The bit I'll share with you to shortcut your learning is that everything that you store in OneDrive, SharePoint document libraries, has a very unique specific ID. It also, as you'd expect, has an item path. I experimented for probably an hour and a half with both of those before like figuring out that it wasn't just as simple. So let me give you an example. If I were to go to this document here, the item path isn't the item path that you think it might be. It's not that. That's not what you need to give the Graph API, because it won't know what to make of it. And it took quite a lot. Well, I got to a point where I was ferreting around and not really getting anywhere. And then a quick chat with, this is where the developer mindset really comes in. And with Mark at the Collab 365, he said, have you tried the Graph Explorer? Hands up who's tried the Graph Explorer. I'm loving that. That's like where, that's what I got to. So no hands up. Oh no, yeah, okay, cool. So I went, Okay, Mark, brilliant. Yeah, so you'll probably get all this. But Mark Jones said, try the Graph Explorer, John. You'll love it. I went, okay. I'm not sure it's going to transform my day too much. However, it did. So, the Graph Explorer. What is this mythical thing they call the Graph? You see what I've just done there? I typed Graph Explorer. I went to the link, and it's. Let me just pop this into chat. I should get you there. Oops, press that. Right. One thing to know, you should be signed in when you do this. Let's sign in. Otherwise, it doesn't know it's you. So I'm going to sign in as Adele. I'm going to give it my credentials to play with. Really, all that's happened there to my brain is that it's just like me being on the tenant with Power Automate. Power Automate knows it's me. The Graph Explorer now knows me. It knows what I can do. And so anything I create using this Graph Explorer, it's a sandpit, right, is going to work as me and is going to give me the same kind of responses as I might get if I used it programmatically. So this thing here that you're looking at, within about 30 minutes, allowed me to find what I wanted. So you'll notice I've signed in. That's my tenant details. I'm signed in as what looks like Helen. And you got a whole bunch of sample queries down the left-hand side. And you just go and experiment. So there's a couple of bits to your request. When you're using the Graph API, there's a couple of ways you can use it. You can say, go get me stuff, put stuff, so post stuff over there, put, patch, delete, so get rid of stuff. The two that I used, I may have used the second one incorrectly, but I used get and I used post. So going back to that original, where was that page? Here, this stuff started to make a bit more sense. But really, all you can do is let's just pick one. List items in my drive. It's going to authenticate me there. It needs to know who I am. Bear with me. It's super cool. It's like it's a playground. It's like in SQL you can run queries before you put them into a stored procedure. You can try things as using the Graph API, and you can explore things. You're not doing any damage particularly. You're just testing them, which is really handy. Just going to open up my password. What am I looking for? I'm looking for Adele. Developer accounts for Adele. There you are. Probably got a space on the end of that I thought I had. What's that? Let's just try that again. Yeah. I want you to sign in. It's because I'm not signed in. Let's just redo that. Right. Pop up the request for me to sign in, please. Okay, it's done it. All right, so it was just a sign-in issue there. What I just did was I clicked on one of these examples and I ran it. I encourage you, if you've not done this before, go off and do that now. Sign into it, go off, do that, get information back from the Graph API about you. There you'll see it down the bottom. That's the response. That's the response that you would get from Power Automate if you did this. If you put this into a step. So knowing that works, the other thing to point out is there are versions of it. There's a beta. I'm using version 1. There's a way that you structure your request. So let's just show you that one in the context of this. Got to get this right. So I'm going to put in, I think that's, no, it might be right. Yeah, I'm not going to give it anything. I'm going to save it. I'm just going to run this. got to think myself through the process. So really all I'm doing there is sending an HTTP request, which because it's in this action is authenticated to me to go and get details about me. Right, let's just do that. Yeah, so I've got to be signed in. I think I am. Run the flow. Okay. So you'll see without much faff, using the Graph Explorer, you can experiment and test a call to it basically, and then copy and paste it into Power Automate. How cool is that? If you know what you're doing, like if I didn't need to research Graph Explorer, I probably wouldn't have gone to that web page. I probably wouldn't have got confused. So like if you know how to use the Graph API, like the mechanics of it, you may not need this, but it is a great way to go and experiment with things and figure out why things are not working. And that's the main reason I wanted to show this to you today. So, right, great. I can get details about me. Let's just have another look at, let's just go and get, okay, there's Adele/Helen. You can get all the details. Now, here's a good one, right? This is what I wanted to start to use. I wanted to list items in my my drive. Let's just see what happens there. Yeah, okay. So I suspected I was going to get that. You'll remember, let's just go back to how do I use, go away. It's interesting that keeps coming up. How do I use the Graph API to get Excel data from my OneDrive? I want to go back to that page that I was on. I think it was this one. Yeah, so here was the thing. I know that that is how I can access workbooks and then ultimately worksheets, but it's this bit that I was missing. And this is, I found a nice way to do this actually. Take care, Renero. This was quite a nice way to do it. So let's go back into, there we go. Graph Explorer, that's what I want. So what's going on here? Let's have a look. So item not found. Okay, because I haven't really given it any information about me. There is a step in here that is important, and I believe it might be in modify permissions. Was this the one? Yes, it was. Okay. This thing you need to know about the Graph API is it needs permissions to do things, not surprisingly. Now let's figure out, there is a web page which gives you all the details. Here we go. These are all the, like, in the same way that Power Automate Desktop and Power Automate have got groups, these are all the groups of the groupings of the calls that you can make. A little bit of Googling leads you to know that when you're doing things with your OneDrive and SharePoint, I think it's using sites. I think it is. Why am I showing you that? Because not that one. I've got to remember where I went from here. List items in my drive was giving me the problem. Wrong query. It's because it can't find it because it doesn't understand who I am. Yeah, it's the consent for sites that I'm looking for. Docs, was it the API reference? This is the one that I wanted. So there's a load of information here, which is really, really helpful. Some common use cases, as you'd expect. This is the place that I probably got to from Googling, to be honest with you. But the thing you mustn't forget is that if you're running an API call, you need to give the right call, the right consent to the right endpoint, the endpoint being the place it'll go and talk to. That does take a little bit of faffing because there isn't such a thing. Let me just show you. Come on, John, go back to the right place. Da, 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 da. There isn't such a thing as the OneDrive endpoint. What it does is it lives within. So if I let's just go down here. So if I search resources OneDrive, I don't think there is one. OneDrive. Yeah, there isn't one. What there is site and sites with drive and drives. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's this one. So how do you get over that problem? Let me try and refresh my memory how we get over that problem. I've got to remember how I did this. Was it modified permissions? I don't think it was. Maybe it was. Yeah, I think it's, I want to get to sites. One of the permissions, oh, okay, I remember now. So when you're running stuff and you click on it, it's like it's giving it to you there. I should just use this Explorer. When you click on the call, it's telling you what you need to give consent to do. So if I want to get list items in my drive, I need to give it permissions to read your files, all of this stuff. It's actually right there on your plate. So the first thing you've got is you've got your run your query. Then you got the permissions for that query, and then you got a bit more information about access tokens. So let's just try that. Let's just consent. I remember this taking a little bit of a while. It's interesting. I don't know whether you have to do this every time, but maybe you do. I don't know. Again, you're just using this as a sandpit. So all it is, you're not using this and setting it up for repeatable automated use. So whatever I'm doing here, I can undo. It's just a sandpit. Right, here we go. Do the last one, because this is the bit I do want to show you, is when you list items in your drive, it gives you the single most valuable bit of information that I could find. Let's just try this. There we go. Boom. Right. Okay, that's what I wanted to do. So now that's worked. I know. So you can see down here it's listing information. Let's just see if I can find a file. I know I've got a file. You can see it there. I've got a file which is an Excel file. Let me just see if I can do a quick search. When I do Control and F, it'll do the search in the context of that window. XLS, have I got an Excel file? Probably haven't. What did I call it? Let's go and have a look what Adele's got in her OneDrive or her SharePoint document library. I think I was messing around with, what was I messing around with? This is where you see John's memory go kaput. I think it might have been that, or was it that? Let's just click on that. No, it wasn't that. Just want to get I want to get a R&D expense. All right, let's just try that. Okay. Sake of argument, this is a sample spreadsheet. We've got sheet 1 R&D expense. So the Graph Explorer has worked. Will it find? Let's just go right to the very top. The thing I had to do was I had to correlate where it was looking to my file structure. Now I don't want to do that live because I don't want to start messing and showing you my own file structure versus this. So I'm hoping Adele's got a file it can interact with. It might be sites actually. So drive is drives. I've got a funny feeling that sites is a different way of accessing things on SharePoint. It's not that. Let's just stick with that. Right, there you go. Run query again. Right. So it's at the top. Oh, it found one. Did it? No. What am I doing there? This is what I do all day, is I'll go down a little bit of a rabbit hole and I will ferret around, get a bit lost, but eventually I'll have a little light bulb moment. But you're really close now to finding all the documents that you've got in your drives. What I want to do, yeah, there's not a lot there. The thing I'd like to show you is finding a specific document, and then when you pull this out, the ID of the document, it's really, really valuable, because then what you can do is use you can use these kind of instructions to go and interact with the Excel document, and that's really what I want to show you. If I don't get there in the next sort of 15 minutes, then I'll leave you to explore that, and I'll do a quick video, because you can see my brain's going off on all sorts of tangents. But it is absolutely possible, and it might be just because my Excel documents are not in the right place. Let me just do something. I'm going to do something off screen now. He hopes. Let's take this over here. Over here. Right. On another screen, I'm just using my my own account because I want to show you the principle. It's possibly because Adele's not set up quite right. Let's just do that. List items in my drive. Right, here we go. And I know, because I know where the documents are in my drive, you see. What's it called? Is no book. The beauty of these live streams is I can go off and just faff. I'm sorry it's not the most exciting thing to watch. However, this is all on behalf of the community. I'll hopefully find you some good answers. What's that? There it is. Right, okay. Right. Just to prove this works, you can see I'm signed in as me. I've just done exactly the same thing. List items in my drive. Now I've set my OneDrive up properly, and you'll do this. And the thing that I remember doing when I first discovered this was I could compare my OneDrive, find this document. I know this exists in my OneDrive, so I knew it's getting the right thing. And then there is the ID of the document. So, right, what do I need to do to update that document? Let me just open the document, actually. Oh, I'm going to give some stuff away here, aren't I? Because we are going to run a quiz in the next month, and it's going to be a prize quiz as well. If anybody's still paying attention after I've been blathering for a bit, we're going to run a prize quiz. And yeah, there's going to be some pretty nice prizes. Have I forgotten what they're going to be? Wrote them down somewhere. I've got a funny feeling there's an Echo show. Got a funny feeling there is something a bit cool, but I can't remember what it was now. It'll come to me, but keep an eye out for that. If you like prizes, it's a general knowledge quiz. There is one round in it which relates to the Power Platform, just to make it a little bit on theme. Doesn't matter if you get questions wrong in that one, because I'm going to like amplify the last round anyway, so the people at the bottom can win the prize anyway. But I'm going to try not to show you the questions from that. I'm just going to open up this file. I'm going to show you parts of that document, and I'm going to show you how you interact. Before I finish, I'm determined to do this. Where there it is not. Looking in my OneDrive to find the document. There we go. What screen's that's going to open up over there? Not there. You can't see that. You did not see any questions then. You definitely didn't see any questions. Right. Delete. But do come along when I advertise it. It should be fun. It'll be a bit less random than this. Right. I'm going to keep that like that. So here is a sheet of questions and answers. I'm not going to show it because that will be a bit of a giveaway. What I'm going to do, you can see I've already been tinkering with this. I'm going to add a new sheet because it's just quicker. But you can interact and rename sheets. I'm pretty sure there's a way to get the sheet name, and then in Power Automate you could substitute it and write it back, or delete a sheet, copy a sheet, rename it, delete a sheet. You could do anything like that. But the principle I want to show you is that you can interact with it using the Graph API. So remember, we've got sheet and my new sheet 2. Right. I'm going to do this as me because I've got all the right permissions. So Excel group. Oh, there we go. So get worksheets in a workbook. Here you go. This is what you need, is you need the ID. Well, I've got it here. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that, stick it in here. And this is how you can start to structure your Power Automate calls. Build it like this, copy it across your Power Automate call. That is the only lesson I really wanted to share with you if you don't already know it. And I hope that's a useful lesson. Appreciate I've been a bit random and a bit different places, but that's just how we work. So there you go. You've got a list of the sheets. It's actually a little bit old because I just deleted one of these, but I've got my sheet names there. So that's all good. All right. Add a new worksheet. It's not complex. You go like this. Stick the item ID, and that's why I said that item ID is really valuable. And the best way I've found to get at it, if it's a local or a drive item, is to use that API call. You can use the SharePoint ones as well. There are some SharePoint ones. They're somewhere down here. Go and tinker with them. SharePoint sites particularly, you'll be able to get stuff from SharePoint. But let's just call this one Sheety Sheet Face. So all I've done there is I've used the post action. I have then put the ID in, and I've just given it this structure here. This is the structure you need to put inside the call. So I'm going to run it. In fact, I'm just going to shut the sheet down. Shut. Run the query. Okay. It seems to have created it in a very short space of time. So let's just go and see. And if I pop that across now, you'll see Sheety McSheetface. So yeah, simple example, but all I need to do now is I need to copy this across to, I'll show you, it won't work because you won't have access to the same things, but copy it across to here. There you go. If Adele had access to my OneDrive, or this was done on one of the APIs which calls SharePoint sites, this would work. And all I would need to do would be to change that to a post, put the same body in that I've got in my Graph Explorer. So it would be that. Like that. I'd give it a new name. Boom. Save it and run it. And that works. So that's a way that you can interact with Excel using the Graph API. But I think, as I've said a few times now, the reason I wanted to share that with you was because all of that learning took place for me probably, maybe took me 2.5, 3 hours, maybe 4 hours of faffing around just to try stuff out. But the transformative step is using the Graph Explorer. Knowing the next transformative step is knowing that your ID is probably a nice quick way to get at stuff. And finally, that in order to do a thing, you need to click on this permissions. It needs to have the permissions to allow you to do things. So long as that is all set up for you, you can create your API calls and experiment with them before you copy it across to your flow and you run it. This won't work because you won't be able to access it, but just out of interest, I'm going to try it. I don't think she's got access to my OneDrive. Yeah. So what I'd want Adele to do is to, can't find any. No, she's got nothing in her drive. Okay, fine. Yeah. I'm not going to start faffing around, but if Adele had a document, that would work. But yeah, that's all I wanted to share with you today. I think we're funny enough, I'm 1 minute off where I plan to stop. Hey, look, I hope that was even moderately useful or has inspired you to think, well, if that Muppet can do it, I can definitely do it. And it's been of use to you. Oh, good. Yeah, good, Wayne. I'm really glad. I'm probably a bit like you. I'd never have explored it until I touched the Graph Explorer. Because it's logical. You know, you can do things. I can go down here. Let's just have a look at these SharePoint ones. Yeah, there's just stuff you can play with. Awesome. I'm glad that's helpful, William. Mark, glad that's useful to you. Exactly, Dave. It's just a starting point. Go and explore this. Just make sure you sign in and be aware of what it is, and then go and use it in Power Automate and see where you go. But that Office 365 groups, that's transformative for me because you don't have to faff with permissions as long as you've got the right permissions. Awesome. All right, so look, I'm going to leave you until the same time next week. Huge thank you. It's been lovely spending time with you. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you, Mark. I'm glad it was interesting for you. Yeah, we just like sharing this sort of stuff. Connor's going to come back next week. He's got a few things on. We're skipping one watch party, but we're back with watch parties the week after. So there'll be another live stream, same time, same place next week. If you've got stuff you want me to do, you'd like to look into, you ask me or Connor, just pop us a note, pop it on one of the forums and say, hey, could you look into this? Then we, of course, will. We'll do this sort of thing. Cool. Glad you enjoyed it, Frank. Carl, sorry. Carl Frank. Yeah, so just get in touch and have a wonderful rest of your day and a great weekend if we don't interact with you beforehand. Yeah, thanks, everyone. Take care now.